Before the break, we told you about cap-and-trade legislation floating in Congress. Now let's get some thoughts from the CEO of a business that would be directly affected by it. Jeff Sterba is the CEO of PNM Resources, the parent of electricity utilities that serve nearly 1 million homes in New Mexico and Texas. Mr. Sterba joins me now from Washington. Mr. Sterba, welcome to Bloomberg News.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right before the break, Lindsay Arendt did a report, and she talked about cap and trade, and she said one of the main issues here is just how much it will cost consumers and businesses. Tell us how cap and trade would affect PNM.
Well, if it's done right, we can do it in a way in which consumers are generally allowed to make a transition in terms of the prices that they pay. If it's done wrong, well, it could end up costing consumers a tremendous amount.
Sir, talk to me about the feasibility of the current plan that's floating before Congress. It aims to cut emissions by 20% by 2020. Is that doable?
Well, it's an absolute big challenge, and I think one of the major things that's going to drive whether it's doable is some of the other details around it. For example, one of the major issues is offsets, the ability to make investments in other industries and outside of the borders of the United States in reducing carbon that may be cheaper than what can be done within your own facilities. Is it doable? It's going to be a very big challenge. I think 20% is a little stiff, but we can certainly, I believe, get to an 80% reduction by 2050.
You testified before Congress, and you said that cap-and-trade legislation would hurt businesses that compete internationally with other energy producers not subject to greenhouse gas limits. How badly would it hurt those producers?
Well, I think it can hurt them. Again, it's a question of how is it done and whether or not there is the ability to get some compensation for that adverse impact in the near term, and also the diligence with which the United States and other countries pursue bringing on the other countries to participate with us in an international accord.
But Mr. Sterba, I'm sure you're familiar with that Pew Research Center study. It found the effect of energy costs would be only about a 1% hike and wouldn't hurt U.S. competitiveness.
I've seen a variety of studies, and I have great respect for that Pew study. I think, and again, is if it's done right, and I think that the bill that is being debated today is a significant step in the right direction to doing this right. It can be done in a way in which consumers are not too adversely impacted, and companies can remain competitive. That's critical in this economy.
What can consumers expect? Will cap and trade result in higher energy costs, as some are suggesting?
Over time, it will. But the question is how much when? And if things are done like an allocation of allowances so the value flows back to consumers, for example, in our business, in the electricity world, that can dramatically reduce the impact so consumers aren't paying twice. They're not paying for the change to clean energy and also paying for emissions from existing facilities.
Right now, 7% of your portfolio is in renewable energy. Is that going to change going forward?
Oh, yes. In fact, we are currently in the process of making some decisions to add to that portfolio. We're in New Mexico and Texas, two areas that are blessed with having great wind and good solar. So we have the opportunity to do that. So we certainly expect to see renewables expand. But we can't solve the problem only with renewables. We also have to pursue nuclear, and we have to pursue clean coal.
As you're no doubt aware, there are some signs that the economy might be starting to rebound. With that in mind, would you see energy demand spiking again, and would that cause a spike in prices?
I do see energy demand starting to pick back up as we move into maybe the end of the third or the beginning of the fourth quarter. I don't believe it will cause a major spike in energy prices because we've frankly seen a very significant decline. In our territory, for the first time I can ever recall, we've actually seen a decline in energy use. So I think we will start to see it pick up, but I frankly don't believe it will result in price spikes.
Mr. Sterba,
like
we have about 30 seconds left. What's your message to Congress? What's the best climate change solution in your opinion?
The best climate change solution is one that we do now, because the cost of uncertainty is enormous on business and on consumers. Second, we need to do it right, and by that I mean making sure that we recognize the impact on consumers and focus on ways to mitigate that through the use of allocation of allowances. And the third is to recognize that we can't do this alone. It has to be done with the international community, and we have to make sure, as I know this administration is committed, that we do that starting in Copenhagen.
Jeff Sterba, the head of Albuquerque-based PNM Resources, joining us from Washington. Thanks.